children with disabilities and autism, open-mindedness, whereby as a parent, if anyone says something about your child, you know how you feel, right? You feel, defensive. And there was a point where I became really upset. Upset with a few members who were saying, why is your child going on the bench and stuff like that? And I'm trying to explain to them the disability. And the Lord kind of brought me back and said, listen, don't be angry with the saints. Don't strive to speak to them. So in essence, don't show anger at individuals. Bring education, bring awareness. And so I decided to pursue the family ministries and for my doctoral studies, but looking at disabilities and how the church can minister to those with various disabilities, including autism spectrum disorder. So she allowed me, my daughter allowed me to venture into another world so I can understand somewhat of what she's going through and what many individuals are going through. My passion eventually was picked up by members of the administration of Georgia Cumberland Conference. They asked me last year to serve in this capacity, which would be the first in terms of disabilities. Not to say we have Jeff Jordan. He pastors the Southern Deaf Church, and he's also the liaison for the Adventist Possibility Ministries. So we do have a representative here for the Adventist Possibility Ministries, but this will be the first for the Disabilities Ministries. And as we do the presentation, I'll share with you the difference and similarities between the two. So I'm just giving you a backdrop, and you saw my 4 children. My first, as I shared, has autism. The last is on an IEP, so we don't know the diagnosis yet. A little hyper, but we don't know where it will lead. But in essence, for caregivers who have children with special needs, we can identify, but the beautiful thing is each child is love, and each is a gift from God. And we ought to show that level of love and embrace with all our children. And so my hope is that each can feel the same level of love within the church family. That's what we're really trying to do in this ministry, because God cares for each person, and we want them to understand that as well. So we come with a disability. What is a disability? A disability is any condition. That's not the CDC's statement. Any condition. So take out the preconceived ideas you may have had about disabilities. Throw it out the window. Any condition of the body or mind that makes it more difficult for the person with a condition to do certain activities and interact with the world around them. So oftentimes, you see, we have stereotypes. If we're in a parking lot at Macy's or we're at the mall, and you see somebody park in a handicapped spot, and they jump out of their vehicle and start to run. we immediately say, hey, they don't have a disability, because why? We have a stereotype of what we think a disability is all about. And so, again, it's any. Now, watch this now. This may include vision, thinking, and this is now, you're not able to necessarily see oftentimes when somebody has a thinking or learning disability, but here it is: remembering, communicating, hearing, mental health, social relationships, which is why the CDC said any condition. You can't oftentimes see what's happening. And when I speak to teachers, I oftentimes say, you may be looking out for children with special needs, but some children have non-visible or invisible disabilities you can't see, but inside their body there's a war going on. And some children are very, very sick, but on the exterior they're showing you a big smile. I'm just saying, using sickness there, I'm not using disabilities for sickness, I'm just saying they may have various challenges. So we can't judge from just the external. And we have to take somebody at their word. When a parent comes and says to you, my child has a special need. This is a need. Oh, no, your child is good. All you need is to speak hard to that child. Put your foot down. You see, again, stereotypes come in. And so we have to listen to each person. Now, the Disabilities Ministries focuses on the 7 areas that the American with Disabilities Act focuses on as well: the cognitive, the hearing, hidden, mobility, psychiatric, speech, and visual. The ADA Act, or the American with Disabilities Act, was passed, I believe, in 1990. And it's important to note that the act was passed, but for many churches and schools affiliated with churches, they are not necessarily under the law, meaning the law doesn't necessarily apply. Maybe in your local provinces, they can push the church to do something, but the church generally was protesting against the act because, again, many churches were saying it's too expensive. So for the disability community, what you're communicating is that our bodies are too expensive to accommodate us. So churches and schools affiliated, we do not have to necessarily change our structure. It's only out of courtesy that we may do that. But what if the church was the one leading that act? And we're the first ones to say this must be done because we need to accommodate all of God's children. Instead, we were the ones on the outside saying, too expensive. So this is where, again, hopefully, in terms of education, we can be the ones advocating for those who are oftentimes so, excluded from the communities. So the Adventist Possibility Ministries, when you look in your new church manual, you can look at it online, you will see APM, or Adventist Possibility Ministries, and it focuses on 7 areas. Now, the difference between the Disability Ministries and the APM is that the APM will focus on orphans, vulnerable children, those mourning the loss of a spouse, and caregivers, which is usually, in terms of North America, those are not necessarily categorized under disabilities. Do you catch what I'm saying? So the North America division has still chosen to use Disabilities Ministries because that's, in terms of the law, ADA, and different organizations, they recognize the word disabilities more, and it's in line with the Disabilities Act in terms of those who are looked after. Nevertheless, this is still a part of our church, and we work together. So whether you use APM or you use Disabilities Ministries, that's up to you in terms of Athens Church, but we still want to cater for all God's children. Amen? All right, so over 1 billion people live with some form of disability. And by the way, you can always raise your hand and share. As you know, sometimes I would say let's wait until the end, but it's okay. You can always raise and share as we go along. So 1 billion people live with some form of disability. That's about 15% of the world's population. If you're thinking about evangelism, consider this. In America, 1/4 of adults have some type of disability. Can you imagine if you had a banner that said, if you have a disability, come out, or we're going to do something for the disability community? You're looking at 1/4, 1 in 4 individuals who's driving by who either has or knows somebody will say, let me check out that church. They're doing something, and they're catering to my community. Sorry about that. Did I miss anything? So, okay. So here you see just a breakdown of mobility, cognition, the percentage of individuals who may have various disabilities, vision, self-care. So it's a good population within the United States. And so there's always a ministry out there. For children and for a church family with children, hey, at least 6.1 million children aged 2 to 17 live in the United States, have some disability, and this one would be ADHD. And here's something that's quite interesting as well. Ellen G. White's second son, or surviving son, also had, some believe he had ADHD as well. And so oftentimes she would be preaching, and she would have, if this is a son, she would have his what is a child? Well, I guess she would have him right below her while she's preaching, kind of rocking and shaking him to keep him still. But when you study what was going on through the years, it was a really tough time. She had a rough time because he's always active, always doing things, maybe sometimes a little disobedient. And so he kept her on her knees, just to say. She was also touched with disabilities in her family. Her husband had several strokes, and that altered his mental state. Her niece, Louisa Wallin, became so mentally unstable that she had to go to a mental facility. Why am I saying all of this? And we know of Ellen White that she suffered a brain injury at a young age from a stone that was thrown. And so, with a disfigured nose and, learning disability because she was not able to study anymore after that. So she never went to high school, never went to college. She understood what it meant to have a disability and what it meant to be surrounded with individuals with disabilities. So this is probably sometimes something we overlook, but this is a history of our church. History of our church here. So if Ellen White went through it, you can understand we all have to deal with it. And when you read her writings, she's very compassionate when it comes on to the ministry towards those with disabilities. Autism, when I started studying and in 2013 for my doctorate, the figure was about 1 in 68. It had just turned to 1 in 68. It was at 1 in 88 before. And when I finished studying, it was at 1 in 54 in 2019. And when I look back now within the year, it's now dropped to 1 in 44. So just to say, more individuals are allowing their children to be diagnosed, and there's greater awareness. So oftentimes in church settings, parents are apprehensive of allowing their child to go in for a diagnosis. There's a stereotype. And maybe not here at Athens, but in many parts around the world, you'll hear, oh, just pray for the child. Or just discipline the child more. Let's look at some myths. Saints, you cannot spank away ADHD or autism. I don't care how good a spanker you are. You cannot do that. It does not leave. And you cannot put them on timeout to get rid of this challenge. It's a developmental challenge. So it's very important when the church can understand that it's okay. If your child has a disability, it's okay. It's okay to have that diagnosis. We love that child, so you don't have to be fearful. The child will always be your child, but the church will now have a knowledge of how to help your child as well. Yes. Yes. So in terms of behavioral, so yes, stress can impact a child. The thing with autism spectrum disorder, that is a developmental, so we were born with. So the stressors are there, but this is already something that they're usually born with. So before, they say from 0 to 2, they can already, the doctors can spot if a child has autism spectrum disorder. So it only helps for the parents to understand that this is what my child may be going through, and there are other developmental disabilities, but when the parent is aware, it saves the child so many heartaches, because now you don't have to scream unnecessarily. You're not trying to discipline and spanking and trying all these things, thinking that will make the child now act better, or ADHD. You now can find the right tools to help your child. So you're saving your child a lot of sometimes emotional, maybe even physical abuse, if you catch what I'm saying. when you are aware, and the church family is also aware. But we'll come to that aspect with the church in a few. I only placed this up there to share with you some attributes of autism, because this was a study. So for church families, if you see a child acting in some of these gestures, access deaf, resists learning, uses people as tools. I'm just going through this slide so you can see. You're now able to say, okay, maybe this child has a special need. It could be autism, it could be something else, but now you're coming with an awareness to say maybe the approach that we would take needs to be different. When I spoke to some of the Pathfinder leaders a few weeks back, I said to them that oftentimes when we do drills, and I have a family here that went to Hackensack Church. I was in New Jersey. I was in Pathfinders growing up, and when it came on to drill time, you want it to be done perfectly because you want to get the prize. But here's it. Do we have any prize for those with disabilities who are on the Pathfinder Club or in the Pathfinder Club and are unable necessarily to follow all the commands, but they want to do their very best? Is there a prize for those who may be out of step, but they're still there trying their very best, even though physically their bodies may not listen to them? So you see, oftentimes, again, in some of our own clubs, we may not have a way to show appreciation for their participation. So when we understand that these are some of the things some of our children are wrestling with, maybe as leaders in various aspects in the church, we can say, let's look out for those with disabilities who are there in the club and are participating. They may not be able to follow all the commands and march, but they're there to show their love for God and the community. We want to honor them. So this is called Models of Disability, and I just want to share that in society, we are usually cultured with a medical model. What does this mean? We approach individuals with disability with, how can I cure your child? Well, your child has what? Okay, we're going to do some things here to make sure at the end of the day your child is productive, and we're going to, maybe even in a year's time, you may not even know they have that. We're going to cure. This is a medical model where throughout history we're trying to cure this, disability. We're curing. And there's also the overcoming model, very close to the medical model, where we highlight, and we oftentimes do this, we highlight individuals who overcame their disability, and we take that person and champion them and say, you see, if he could do it, then all of you can do it too. That's the overcoming model. Is that a fear model? If Susie went to UGA and got an A, all of you can get an A. Is everyone going to get an A, a 4.0 when they go to UGA? No. So why do we do that with the disability community? So you see, this is where we have to take a step back. The social model and the culture model is one where we're reframing it, where the problem is a failure for structured social environment to adjust to the needs of those with disabilities instead of the individual adjusting to the demands of society. The culture model to reframe disability as a valuable and vital part of human diversity. That's kind of where society is now moving. Where instead of trying to cure the person, we're trying to ensure that we're catering to that individual. There is a disability parking. We're structuring the churches, structuring the buildings to cater, because these are individuals with a life, and they would like to live their lives. Powerful models here, 3 points of views: the historical view, the postmodern and the biblical view. Stephanie Huback, same lake, different boat, writes on this, and she pinpoints that disability oftentimes is seen as an abnormal part of life in a normal world. That's a historical view. So if you have a disability, it's abnormal. And all of us here are normal. That's the same thing the disciples were saying to the man. What's wrong with this man? He's abnormal. We are normal. The postmodern view says disability is a normal part of life in a normal world. Sounds good, but the only problem is that without a biblical context of the great controversy, you would say this world is normal. This world is not normal. This is not how God created this world. So the biblical view says disability is a normal part of life. That's what Jesus was contextualizing. This man did nothing wrong. He's just born with a disability. Disability is a normal part of life in an abnormal world. So it is normal, listen to me now, if I were to come out this church and start driving back into Snellville to my home, and I meet in an accident, it's normal for something to occur in an accident and for maybe eventually I'm not able to walk. Guess what? That's normal in an accident, in an abnormal world. If the doctor comes and says, well, we see something your child may develop some genetical issue, guess what? That's normal in an abnormal world. Do you see how that changes the context? And if today you can say, well, I may not have a disability, don't worry. Put temporary before that. You're temporarily non-disabled. So long as you live in this world, you will acquire a disability. Just live long enough. It's going to happen. And guess what? That's normal in an abnormal world. So Jesus is coming to transform this abnormal world to what he had originally created. So get that biblical view in. So disability is a normal part of life in an abnormal world. There's a term you should know, ableism is a discrimination, often social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical abilities are superior. So we are trying to get rid of ableism. And there's a context to ableism, and this is how it's going to affect the church and how it has affected the church as well. Ancient civilizations, the attitudes of ancient civilizations has affected us. In ancient civilizations, disabilities were fully integrated into the rural life of the community. In the classical world, like the Grecian society, if you had a disability, they basically got rid of you from birth. As soon as you were born, disability, we threw you out. The lions, the tigers, the vultures, they take care of you. So they just, if you see films such as 300 or any of the Grecian films, those with disabilities were looked down upon and scorned. And children with disabilities were either excluded from the camp or killed. Now, for the Grecian buildings that were erected, it was built for those who were non-disabled. The Romans followed and patterned the Grecian buildings, structures, and most of Western civilization after did the same thing. We built buildings for those who were non-disabled, not those who were disabled. So we're just within a past century trying to now build structures for those with disabilities. So yes, the ancients have affected us in the way we do things. But imagine if all our buildings were already built with those with disabilities in mind, how it would have made things a bit smoother. The Industrial Revolution did something for disabilities. Those with disabilities before could go and farm. They could go and were valued in their communities. Some of them were even just jesters. They would be at even with the circus and such. But the Industrial Revolution now was looking at speed. Can you work in the factory? Can you move quickly? Can you lift 20 pounds or more? Ever see that statement? 25, 30 pounds, can you lift? And so those with disabilities were excluded from the job market, not looked at now, and only again were catered for the non-disabled, so they became financially burdened. In fact, there's a tax burden upon individuals with disabilities. I forgot the terminology used, but if you have a disability in this country, you're paying sometimes 10 to 20% more for products that you need than the non-disabled. It's expensive to have certain disabilities in this country. Just go to the hospitals, you'll see. So there's a tax just by having a disabled body. So we want to move in our relationships with those with disabilities. We want, before it was apart from, you're excluded, to we're going to do a ministry to those with disabilities. Well, the best place to come is the center, but at least we're moving to with. We're going to have a worship service with those with disabilities. We want to now go to a place where we can have the worship services done by those with disabilities. Now, watch the larger context in society. When was the last time you watched the news and saw someone with a visible disability reading the broadcast? Are you telling me that no one with a visible disability can read the news? Yet society says, no, we only are looking for those who are non-disabled to do our news broadcasts. So we have been already patterned, we have been culturalized to only look out for those. We only want non-disabled to do things for us. Well, we want to see our programs being done by those with disabilities. The church needs to be the one at the forefront pushing for this. They're children of God. And eventually we're worshiping together, and it matters not if you are disabled or non-disabled. We're active, we're participating together. That ought to be the movement. Any thoughts on this before we move on? Yes. And it's Debbie, right? Debbie? Diane. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was just thinking about being a camp meeting and watching deaf group in the front, and they have somebody doing sign language.
Yeah.
When we're doing like the song service, because it's so beautiful, and I think how wonderful for them to be there, and they're hearing the sermon, they're singing the songs, their hand movements. It's just beautiful.
I have a book, The American Sign Language, and I've had it for about 3-4 years. I'm trying to learn. But each time I go to page 40, let's just say page 40, for something life gets at me, and I'm going back to page 1. But just to say, I catch what you're saying. It's so powerful when they're integral in the program. But saints, there are programs out there, and Pastor Michaela can help. I probably shouldn't, that you can learn sign language. In just a few months, I'm going to sign up for it, and there are various programs around that you can do. But wouldn't it be powerful if individuals who may come who are deaf, and they came from UGA or anywhere else, and they came and they were sitting down, that members here could just jump into action and start communicating. How are you? And you can say, I'm fine. Say, I'm trying. So it's a beautiful thing when you can sign and communicate, because it opens up a world for them. And so this is something that we can do. You're trying to learn the language, you're trying to understand, and we're patterning Jesus when we do that, because Jesus comes and dwells with us. And then he bids, come and follow me. So, but you have to go into the world. So we're coming to this aspect of Jesus. Why should we care about those with disabilities? Because God cares. And this is a beautiful thing. Dan and I were speaking just a few minutes ago in the fellowship hall. And when we understand how much Jesus cares for those with disabilities and the Godhead, we then will see the great controversy in a different light. We will then realize that this planet is a special needs planet of the universe. We're the ones who have fallen. We're the ones who emotionally, mentally, physically are below the standards of the other unfallen beings. And we understand that it is God who comes and steps into our world to teach us about this world and to help us in that process. But that's the whole plan of salvation. It surrounds disabilities. But God cares. Leviticus 19:14, God says, do not insult the deaf or cause the blind to stumble. You must fear your God. I am the Lord. There's a story of Jacob who he took advantage of his father who was going blind. And we know that story, contextualized. He took advantage, he got the birthright blessing, had to flee for his life. Joseph came to see his uncle, and here it is that his uncle had two daughters, Rachel and Leah, and he loved Rachel. But we understand the context. He did not love Leah because Leah was tender-eyed. And here it is that Leah was despised by Jacob. And God says, I got you. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, Jacob. Now it's time for me to teach you a lesson. So Jacob had, lied to his father and basically also offended Leah. And God says, watch what I'll do. God now came, Jesus came in the form of a man and wrestled with Jacob. And in the wrestling, he got a new name, but he also got a touch from Jesus and his hip. And in that wrestling, he now became disabled. And he started to walk. But prior to that touch, Jesus came in the middle of the night when he could not what? He couldn't see. How does it feel to be taken advantage of when you can't see? You don't like it, do you? And now also with disabilities, you were one who looked down upon those with disabilities. Now how does it feel to have a disability? But here's the beauty of the thing. He's walking back with a disability now to his family, and his family still loved him. And Leah loved him still. And eventually, Jacob understood the concept so much so that when he died, he said, bury me where Leah is. Because now he understood the value that God even placed upon Leah. And it was Leah who would eventually be the matriarch in the lineage of the Son of God. So Jesus elevated Leah, elevated this woman with a disability. And so that's another sermon. But just to say, God is saying, I'm watching how you treat those with disabilities in your church, in your family, in your community. I am God. I watch what you do. I watch what you do. And we went through this sermon already with the man where Jesus says, this is to glorify. God is going to be glorified. Ellen White says, I saw it in the providence of God that widows and orphans, the blind, the deaf, the lame, and persons afflicted in a variety of ways have been placed in close Christian relationship to his church, is to do what? Prove his people and develop their true character. So God is saying, I am bringing them, I'm sending them to you, and I want them to come to your church to help to disciple you. They are the ones who are going to disciple you. They're going to teach you patience. Your children with disabilities will teach you love, will teach you how to be forbearing and to be humble. They will teach you these things. And angels of God are watching to see how we treat these persons who need our sympathy, love, and disinterested benevolence. This is God's test of our character. This is God's test. Which is why I said this ministry is integral in the plan of salvation. How you treat those with disabilities. For the church, and let me just pause right here. Can everyone just stand and take just inhale and exhale. Inhale, exhale. You see, the food was so good. But after such a good meal, sometimes we want to go to lay activities. All right, you can take a seat. Good to stretch. So various estimates suggest that almost 20% of the population has some type of disability, and between 2 to 3% in any community have intellectual disabilities, ASD or other developmental disabilities. Therefore, in a congregation of 400 people, you might expect as many as 12 children and adults with developmental disabilities to be in attendance. If 1,000 people, you might expect 30 people with developmental disabilities to be present. So within your congregation, without a shadow of a doubt, there is someone with disabilities, and oftentimes developmental disabilities as well. Again, this is something that we cannot ignore. We now have to say, how can we cater for the population? When it comes on to autism spectrum disorders, one researcher highlighted that 80% of those with a child with autism spectrum disorders, those 80% of marriages will end in divorce. Now, that may be too high. I've also seen other statistics which are lining up there. And when people say, are you sure? I say, well, look in your congregation. Look in your congregation. How many single parent or single mothers are there with children with disabilities? For some strange reason, the men jump and abandon ship. But there may be reasons why. You see, for many developmental disabilities, or families who have their children with disabilities, developmental disabilities, they're not able necessarily to come to church as often as they'd like to. It's hard. The struggle is there. It's real. You know, loudness, movements, and such. So it's easy for them to stay home. But what they miss is they miss the fellowship of the saints, the singing. They miss the greeting. Oftentimes at church is the only time you get a hug for the week. True or false? How many people did you hug during this week apart from church members? You catch what I'm saying? So at church is the only time you probably get a hug. You get a holy kiss. Holy. It's a time you're able to greet and talk to your friends. These are your brothers and sisters. Jesus said, these are your brothers and your sisters. These, you are my brothers and sisters. That's what Jesus was implying. So they're cut off from the fellowship. And sometimes when you were on the brink of maybe a bad argument at home and you came to church, something was said that rekindled love for your spouse. They're missing all of that. Which is why, you know, it's good for them to come, but this is where maybe we need to start to go to them and minister. But there's a lot of homes where it's like it's really pressuring. And I would like to, if men are here, you know, if we had more men, I would love to say, listen, your families need you. The temptation is to say, let me just bail out here. But your child needs you. And your spouse needs. I didn't say want. They need you. Your presence as a burden bearer. One book I read highlighted that when a father sits in a PTA meeting, it means more than when the mother is there. The teachers listen to the fathers more than the mothers. Just by virtue of the father's presence, the teachers are saying, okay, we're going to try to make sure we do this and that for your child. So when the father is absent, it really hurts the children. Just to say, fathers, you are needed. I won't go through the full presentation today, but I'm going to continue, and then when I see a glaze coming on your eyes, I know it's time for me to stop. So I'm a cool educator in that sense. So the role of the church, I highlighted this. You are able to bring you're able to ease stress and provide peace of mind for the family members with disabilities when they're able to come and worship here. Powerful impact the church has. So for the goals for inclusion, the family impacted by special needs feels welcome and part of the faith community, and the church develops an accommodation plan for the child or individual with special needs that benefits the person, works with the capabilities and available resources of the church. So you don't have to be a wealthy church. You don't have to be rich and have all the ministries paid for. No. In fact, here at Athens, you have something already powerful. The first person that met me outside was Brother Bush. Forgot the first name, Alan Bush. And he was the first person. He greeted me, warm handshake and a warm smile. Attitude is the most important thing that a church family can have. And once you have that, you're on the road. You're on the perfect road path, because at that point you can give it, shape up what you can and help out. But when a person feels that they're welcome, it does something. Went back to Hackensack Church in New Jersey over the summer. I haven't been there for years, and so I wanted to do something for them. I did a revival for them, and on the Sabbath, the last Sabbath, my wife has a friend who came, and he's in his wheelchair. and they have a staircase that comes up to the church, and we're kind of concerned, so we gave a heads up to the deaconess, and she said, don't worry about it, we got this. And 5 men met him outside and helped him to come on up. And the church, you know, they don't have the structure to change this or that, but they had willing hearts to accommodate him. And they said, anytime you want to come, we'll be here. So this is where attitude is the most important thing a church can have. Don't worry about having budgets for this and that. Start with attitude. Jesus did not walk with a budget, but he catered for everyone. We can do the same. Key focus, keep Jesus as a central focus. If Jesus is the focus of special needs ministry, then the church is less concerned with nudging a student toward better social skills. Again, no medical model here. Take off the medical cap. You're not here to fix the child. You're here to help them feel comfortable and experience Jesus. A Jesus-focused ministry gives greater weight to connection over correction. You see, all through the week, your children are going out and the teachers are saying, come on, you need to do this. You need to try and act like those who are non-disabled. That's the lesson plan. You're going to try so that you can fit in to society. Well, imagine being told that 6 days of the week, and on the 7th day you come, and at church just saying you need to try harder so that you can fit in with the church family. And that's the messaging that comes to you each and every day. Is that godly? No. So we need to share with them that Jesus loves them and provide a positive, anxiety-free church experience. And I saw some things happen at the worship service here at Athens that I want to go back and look for my church, because I saw an anxiety-free environment. You can come, you can sit, and it's powerful. I don't even have to put it in words, Pastor Michael, but you're able to flow with the worship, and nobody pinpoints you and says, hey, what's your name? and all of a sudden you become anxious. And I think sometimes we think it's cool, but you have individuals who have fear of speaking publicly, and when you put a mic in there, they're not coming back next time. That's the last you're going to see them. So there's a lot of things we need to look back at and address once more. But you're on the path already. So this is a point I can come to, and if I can share another couple slides, I'm going to skip through a few things. I don't want to overwhelm you. But how can you help as a spiritual educational leader, a member here in the church? Watch out for architectural barriers. Just take a glimpse. This is where the church can look, and the church board can look and say, okay, what are some things that we can look at and modify? I am going to speak to Kurt Allen, who's our treasurer, and he says that, you know, for churches, he said I can apply to the conference and allow them to maybe make a budget for churches that want to modify, so they can try and give some funds to help out churches. So you can look and say, what can we do? If we need to modify this building, where are some things that we can modify? What would be the budget for it? And the conference has a willing ear now to try and make those changes happen. So if the bathrooms need to be accessible for those in wheelchair, that's maybe something we can look at. How much would that be? Get an architect, tell us what we need to do. But look around you and put yourself in the same shoes. Would I be able to come through this church easily? Would I be able to sit through? Now, here's something. This is no critique to Athens. I say this to every church I go to. These things. Pews. A structure that we've all, grown up seeing. What's good and bad about these? It's not made for wheelchairs. So what's the theological message being conveyed by the architectural messaging? Huh? All right. But what's the message being conveyed? We're not accommodating. So if you have wheelchairs, we're sorry. If you can squeeze here, that's good. Otherwise, you're not welcome. Or you can sit in the front row. How many of you like going somewhere and going to the front row to somewhere you've never been to before? Do you enjoy that? Have you done that often? No. So you see, we have a theological message. We're sending a message that we're only catering for those who are non-disabled. Again, the Grecian thinking coming back. We do it unconsciously because this is what we've grown up in. But we now need to pause and say, is this accommodating for us? So when you're doing a church renovation, I would say if you can exit, that's good. Obviously, some churches can't. So what one church in Florida did, I won't go into detail because that may give it away, but they took away some of the pews to make room for those with wheelchairs to come. So just to say, this is, you can make modifications. So if you're saying in your advertisements and you put the wheelchair sign on your flyers, ensure that you have a space where they can come. And we need to put that in our handbills and flyers when we're doing revivals so that the community, okay, yeah, they accommodate us. They will then come and ensure that there's a space where they can be there. Go ahead.
So if you put chairs out, then if someone with a wheelchair comes in, you move chairs so they have an open space?
Yeah, you need to plan ahead to say, okay, say we're going to use this section for wheelchairs. That would be something you can look at. If there's chairs, just ensure that it's not blocking their passage so they can come to that spot. So this is where the board can come together, think, and be creative. But just watch out for architectural barriers. And sometimes you may have children, again, with various needs, sensory needs, that you may now have to, again, my church at All Nations, we have it's a small building as well. And so we have limited rooms. But what we're trying to do is to say, if someone comes with a sensory need, they can occupy a room. We have a room just to sit, you can occupy, you can sit down with them. I can only pray that my church maintains attitude where if you come with a special need and they have ADHD or whatever, if they run up and down in the passage, nobody cares. Because I don't care. I don't care. So we just, this is Bob, or this is such. But I've learned that the pastor makes a difference, and the elders. How many times, growing up in the church, if you've grown up in the church, elder pastor gets up to speak, and there's a baby crying, or there's a movement in a child, and the person stops and. And what happens when that occurs? The whole entire congregation now turns their head and looks at the family. Now, that's a form of bullying. Call it as it is. You just allowed now the entire church family with eyes now focus upon this family, and they're trying their best to contain this child, and now all the eyes are upon them. How would you feel? Do you feel like going back again? So I always try to say, for leaders, elders, pastors who are up here often, you set the emotional thermostat of the church. If you're okay with the membership, with who's there crying or such, the membership is okay. If you get irritated, the membership, because they're trying to protect you as a speaker, they now turn towards that person. You set the emotional thermostat in the church. So it's very important for you to already maybe speak with the congregation, say if a child is coming, we have some deaconesses who can come and assist, or just to say, saints, it's okay. I'm okay with a noisy church. Jesus said suffer. There's a reason he said suffer. Because sometimes we like quiet churches, and he said suffer it to be. Suffer the little children, and let them what? come to me. Jesus would prefer little children running around busy and such. He'd prefer them close beside him than far away. Suffer them to come and forbid them not. For Jesus has bigger little children who are very disobedient, who Jesus suffers to come close to him. And so if he suffers us to come to him, we ought to learn to suffer the little children to come as well. So attitudinal barriers, we got to keep that. You have that already here in Athens. We can increase that, but our attitude makes a difference. We have one lady, her name Nancy. I come with her name a little later. She shares that when it comes on to speaking about disabilities, it's good when you can be open and be frank. And she shares that with little children. She has a classroom she was monitoring, and let's just say John is there. John has a disability, and at lunchtime, the kids are out playing, little children, they're playing, and nobody's throwing the ball to John. Nobody wants to play with John. What she did was bring the class back, and this is with permission of parents. She now explains to the children what the condition John has. And the little children, they say, oh, okay, that's what John has. The next time they would go out to play, she's monitoring, so she has cameras, she's monitoring their movement, and the children are now all interacting with John. So little children, they understand it's just a disability. And John is a person like any one of us. And they all began to play with John. The same thing happens with church adults. Because you notice sometimes with church, sometimes people say, I don't want to talk to her, she's miserable. Or he gets grumpy and I'm not speaking with him. But had you known the condition that the person wrestles with, you say, oh, so that's the issue. I didn't know. Oh, let me come back and speak to him right now because I didn't know. So oftentimes because of ignorance, we isolate ourselves from our church family members. We don't know what they're going through. So the more you're able to speak and freely talk about disabilities, the more parents are able to let their guards down, and adults who have and are struggling with something can let their guards down as well and say, okay, this is what I have, and the membership can now learn to love each other. Communication barriers are just to say sign language again, Braille. And it doesn't matter the disabilities. If you now can say, okay, how does your child communicate? Let's see if I can work and see, do they need to touch something? Do they communicate by smelling? You're trying to get the language. Let me continue. Programmatic barriers. This is where, if we're having, say, Pathfinders. I'm going to pick on the Pathfinder Club. All right. All right, everybody, we're going hiking next week. Okay. Person with a wheelchair. Excuse me. See what happened to the program. It excluded at least one person with a visible disability, and even the others who said, I can't hike. I've got an invisible disability. You can't see it, but I can't go up those hills. It's going to destroy me. Is that the only program you have for them? Or do you have others? So when we're doing programs in the church, think about those with disabilities. It's okay to go hiking, but then you must have another plan in the future that can, incorporate as many people as possible. Is that, you catch what I'm saying? And liturgical barriers, this is where in our minds we're saying individuals with disabilities should not marry, should not be baptized, and the list could go on. So one lady wrote to me. She was at Andrews, and she has various challenges in the wheelchair and such, confined to a wheelchair, various challenges. But she wrote in the letter that there was somebody who loved her, and she wanted to marry him, and the family said, no, because you have a disability. So she was heartbroken in that letter to me. So in essence, there's already, that perception that if you have a disability, you're not supposed to be married. You don't have the right to love. You don't have the right to marry someone. And that can be a big challenge. Yes? Mm-hmm.
And all of the in her wheelchair and now steps set her in her wheelchair and access the floor. And then they one side, the other side, and so there. They really share that piece. So she can be
Praise the Lord.
pastor friend, his wife is in a wheelchair and walk a little bit. They'll come in and fold up the wheelchair and set it right where she's going to see it. So people can get in or go around and she's there. At the end, they come open her wheelchair, she gets in, and she goes out.
Yeah. And again, that did not take a lot of money.
But
the attitude is there.
And the willingness to make room for that individual. So we need to also, in our programs, I have one church sister, son has autism, low function, and I asked her, I said, he's not in our church membership list. And she said, well, because of his autism, didn't think that he could be a member. I said, no, he is a member. If something happens to you in the future, and another pastor is coming and looking at those members whom he ought to or she ought to visit and call, he's not on it. And yes, he's always in church. He listens to the word. He loves the Lord. He's a member. And so we had professional faith. We had him brought in. And so he is listed in our membership. Just because you have a disability does not mean you're not loved by God. And you're not a part of the body. So we have to get that out of our mind. Jesus does not simply love able-bodied people. True or false? So if people are slow in saying true. So let me just ask then. If you were to develop Alzheimer's, does that mean that Jesus does not love you anymore? Because you've lost the ability to remember? If you've forgotten how to call your wife's name or your husband's name, does it mean that heaven has lost its love for you? Do you really have to have everything cognitively okay for Jesus to love you? So you see, some perceptions we have to get out. Jesus loves us in spite of our challenges. That's the love God has for us. Go ahead, Adam.
If you check with his disciples that he loves us in spite of all of them. Because most of his disciples are children. And in fact, when he instructed Peter he said, Peter, Satan has desired to sift you as wheat, but I've prayed for you. And when you are converted, strengthen your brothers. So he was converted yet when he was given the challenge to strengthen his brothers.
That's right.
So Jesus, what you're saying, that's the way Jesus acts. He chooses us even when we are harsh from him.
Yeah. And it goes to the Imago Dei, or the image of God. You're already made in the image of God at your birth. And so whether a child is born with a full mental capacity, the child is made in the image of God. If the child has an arm missing or a leg made in the image of God. Matters not how they're born, made in the image of God and his likeness.
Speech impediment. That has nothing to do with me and you. That's how God operates. That has nothing to do with me and you. I love you both. I will give you the ability to speak. Don't worry, I've got you.
So when we were able to allow people to see the breadth and the depth of God's love, it does something. I'm going to skip through many things here, but this is what I'm going to come to and close off. So here it is. God has always desired to dwell and communicate with each person. Now, we know the sanctuary model. So I'm speaking to Seventh-day Adventists now. We know the tabernacle, we know the sanctuary model. And in the wilderness, when Moses started to build it and the people gave of their substance to help ensure it came about, God was now trying to communicate in can I say, non-expensive way with everyone in the camp. I say non-expensive. It was not a supermodel. It was not a big church design, simple design. But watch this now. God appealed to every sensory of human learning, auditory. When you were coming into the camp, you would hear the shofar playing, or the sound of the trumpet. From afar, you would hear the Levites as they played their instruments, and you're coming into music. It was just thrilling to the ears to hear the sound. And so God was appealing to those who learn by the auditory, by hearing. And from sight, spatial, there were things to see, colors to see. Blue and scarlet and white and purple colors and the gold this, and you would ask questions, why is this in this color and that in that color? He's appealing to those who need to see something. Kinesthetic touch. They had to touch the lamb. They had to sacrifice the lamb. They had to touch the bread and eat the bread without yeast. They had to, sometimes in Passover, eat the bitter herb. They had to touch, So touch was something. And then for taste, I just told you with the bread and the sacrifice, they were able to taste. So everyone is tasting of the goodness of God. Then God was saying, okay, there may be a pandemic in the future, and you may not be able to come to the sanctuary. Or maybe like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you cannot physically come. I got you. Just turn and face the sanctuary wherever you are. I got you. He was already catering for pandemic to come. I got you. And when they turned, God says, I heard your prayer. Even though you were not able to physically come to church, I got you. I got you. Interpersonal, for those who needed to be around people, because we have social people as well, we just got to be around our friends. God says, come. And notice what happened when Jesus was going to the temple at 12 with his parents. It was such an intense fellowship that the parents didn't even know Jesus was not with them until a whole day had passed. They were enjoying the fellowship of the saints that they forgot their Jesus. To them a few days to find Jesus. Logical. God says, okay. And if you read the book of Leviticus and Numbers, and you see detail in the building of the sanctuary, every measurement detailed, and it doesn't just stop there, the sanctuary in that part. You come to Daniel and the measurements and the dates and the prophets, Isaiah and all these, and the measurements. Again, he's appealing to the logical. Some people love the prophecies in Scripture because they love the maths. It appeals to them. God says, I got you. And then the linguistic. As the priests would read the Scripture, it did something to the people. The language of Scripture. And by the time, David had finished his Psalms and Solomon had written the Proverbs and the prophets, other prophets, major and minor, had put their things together. You can imagine the oratorical level of reading and display that came about as people listened to the history books and they listened to the poetry of the Psalms. And it did something for them. What am I saying here? God was appealing to every sensory of human learning. But today, according to Marlene Lefevre, for every 10 students in an average 6th grade class, one will find 2 auditory listeners, 4 visual learners, 4 tactile kinesthetic learners. And she says that 90% of all teaching in our churches is auditory. That means 8 out of 10 people are not being taught in the way they best learn. So who's lazy? when it comes to reaching people, not God. God says, I cater for everybody, everyone. Those who can come, those who can't, those who are able-bodied, those who are disabled. I cater for everyone. But for the church, if we don't understand what I'm saying, you're salt. We're sorry. We can't help you. And Jesus did the same when he came on this earth. He did not walk with a computer. He didn't have a projector. He did not have PowerPoints. But he taught them and said, hey, give me some seeds here. You see these seeds as they scatter? This is like the kingdom of God, and a child could understand. And a child could touch the seed as well. And Jesus was teaching them with simple things that he had, but he understood already that they needed different ways of understanding spiritual things. And when you read the book Christ's Object Lessons, Ellen White goes into great detail as to how Jesus, the master teacher, was able to teach. So I won't go any further here, but just wanted to see if you had any questions. I didn't go into maybe what you can do for various ministries, but it's okay. If you have a group here at Athens or individuals who would like to be a part of the disabilities ministries, we want to do other trainings to come, but primarily if there's a burden, maybe someone here has a burden to say, I want to, and I don't even know if you have already, but, oh, yes, we do. I'm sorry. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So if you have that burden and you have the ministry and you want to grow, we want to help. As a conference, we want to and if more individuals want to be a part of that and to say we want to help out Athens Church to ensure that each person that comes and feels welcomed, is warmed, we want to be a part of that. And we want to help out as much as possible. So just want to find if there's any questions that you may have. Let's talk about it right now. Any thoughts? Any questions? Was this such a presentation that everyone is? Yes.
Trying to think of how to frame the question. So when you have, let's say you have a visitor,
Mm-hmm.
Children that
Okay.
Okay.
Then you have to be on the spot, ready to adapt your program.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
So strategy one here
is gathering information about a person with special needs. So from the get-go, what the team would have to do is to find out, maybe have a survey that can just pinpoint at the door, do you have a disability or a special need that we need to know about, and how can we cater for you? So this is, again, where it's very important for us to know, as leaders, Pastor Michaela, and the elders here to know, because just for example, this is an example here. If someone has a sensory overload when it comes to noise or touching, and that person was to come and sit in the front, and I'm our Pastor Michaela is now really warmed up and prepped up with a sermon, and Pastor Michaela is stomping the ground here. And she's laid a hand on this person. And is shouting right here. You do shout, Pastor. So she's laid a hand and shouting. How do you think this person is going to react? And the person may be covering your ears, maybe doing some things that would seem offensive. But it's because they can't manage the sensory overload. And so the pastor, the elders knew that information ahead of time. The way they would have preached around this individual would be different. And so gathering information is important from the get-go, and even from the fellowship hall, which was so well prepared, you're able to mark out what had nuts or not, because some special needs is literally a life and death situation. If someone needs something off, they die. And we've had that. We've seen that. So in essence, gathering information is very important. Yes.
something that she had been living around for years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she bumped her head one day, got a concussion. Okay, so just an accident, and I know somebody else they hit their head on their plastic. And
that head injury, they ended up going to the hospital, find out they had some other problems that they didn't even know they had. Now, with her concussion.
She's really sensitive. And so the church that she was attending, they had instruments like drums and, and singing and everything very loud. They caused her a headache, and so she had to change churches. They caused it was one that had a calmer type of atmosphere. Because it really would give her a headache when her was sick. And so she had to change the church.
And
she didn't have that anyway.
yeah.
All of that.
And as you mentioned, for noise sensitivity, sometimes it's a simple purchase, sometimes even headphones can go a long way to help to reduce the noise. And sometimes that may not even help. You may have to go to another church if possible. But again, the beauty of it is understanding. So if we now understand that there's noise sensitivity that you now have, let's see if we can modify, or you can use a headphone, or let's see where we can make a compromise. So just to say, once you talk about something, it's very easy. I just share this, the gathering information is needed, and sharing that with those who need to.
So Pastor Michaela, the elders, these are individuals need to know. The children's ministries leaders, if we have children, they need to know this information when it comes on to special needs.
Adults who come to this church with special needs, it's important as well to know. You now know how to cater to each person. This is the last strategy. Well, this is a book, Barbara Newman, Helping Kids and Kids with Disabilities. That's one I referenced, where she said she had all the kids going about. So when you're helping the kids, when you talk about disabilities, children's story time, Sabbath, you're helping them tremendously. Just wanted to let you leave with this one. Thinking alongside a person with disabilities. So if they're here, get a chance to sit down with them. You have buddy programs, but this is where you're getting a chance to know your buddy. And you now get a chance to know what makes your buddy cry or shrink back in church, what makes him happy, what makes your buddy sad. And so when you're a friend to them, when you come close and you're thinking alongside, you can give the warning ahead of time. There's going to be a big program, the music is going to be intense, you may need a headphone, you may need such, but again, friendship ministry is where you're becoming their friend. If you can become the friend of your parents and get a chance to know.
What's it like, with your child with special needs? Tell me a little bit more. Let me understand. Wow, so you guys have no break. Okay, you know what? I'll get another friend, and we're going to come by your home Sabbath night and Saturday night, and we're going to give you the night off. We're going to watch your children. We're going to watch some movie together. We're just going to make you go, do what you got to do. We've got that home cared for. What you just did now is give that couple a lifeline. Yes. You gave them a lifeline. Go to the hotel, whatever you need to do. Go have a nice romantic restaurant. Go, just eat. So you're now thinking alongside the families, you're thinking alongside the individual, and you're trying to cater as much as possible. Virgin, that doesn't cost anything to do. But what you have given them is more valuable than silver and gold. So simple things. You don't need you don't need a big budget. You don't need a mega church. You don't need a paid staff. But you just need the right attitude and a willingness. And God will give you the wisdom. God will bless you with the understanding as to what you can do to help. But just a little help, a little call can go a long way for the families. So unless there's anything else, I will close at this point. I just want to say thank you, Pastor Michaela, for giving me the opportunity to come and to share this time. Let's pray. Lord, I just want to say thank you for your blessings. Just want to say, Lord, that this is a beautiful church. They're going places, they're reaching this community. And I pray that, Lord, you will bless them with wisdom and the opportunities to just enrich the lives of those around. I pray that the information shared will go a long way in just strengthening this ministry. And I pray for Sister Joycey that you will continue to bless her as she helps to ground this ministry here at Athens. And I pray that others will join in and allow this to grow as well. Let your Holy Spirit continue to abide and keep each family here and just bless them, Lord, in a special way. In Christ's name, amen.
Well, thank you. And I just want to personally thank you for taking the time, because out of your busy schedule, to put us on your docket to come and to share with us this wealth of information. And I hope and pray that we all will take it to heart, and we will do much better when it comes to what the Lord will have us to be and do and to help one another.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.